Have you ever achieved what felt like this um, absolutely unshakable zen during a wildly stressful time in your life?
Oh, yeah.
You know that feeling. Everything around you is chaotic. Maybe you're going through a terrible breakup, or I don't know, your workplace has turned into a toxic nightmare, or your family dynamics are just completely imploding.
Right, the real heavy stuff.
Exactly. But somehow, in the middle of all that fire, you just feel nothing.
Just blank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel perfectly still. You look at the chaos, you look at your own stillness, and you tell yourself, like, wow, I am really evolving. I am so at peace.
Only to realize, maybe months or honestly years down the line,
Yeah.
that you weren't actually at peace at all.
Right.
You were just completely, totally numb.
Yes. And it is a deeply unsettling realization when that illusion shatters. So for today's deep dive, we are pulling together a really compelling triad of frameworks.
That's a heavy stack of sources today.
It really is. We're looking at clinical psychology, the biological mechanics of polyvagal theory, and the cybernetic systems thinking of Gregory Bateson.
Which is a fascinating combination.
Totally. We're using all of this to untangle this exact mirage. Our mission today is to explore the critical and, frankly, heavily romanticized distinction between emotional detachment and true healing.
Because they are not the same thing.
Not at all. We are going to unmask why what is essentially a refined biological withdrawal is so frequently mistaken for, like, profound spiritual maturity or a massive psychological breakthrough.
And it is a vital dynamic to understand right now. I mean, look at the world we're operating
Oh,
in.
it's overwhelming.
Right? We have this environment of profound information overload, constant digital connectivity, and just chronic low-grade stress.
Everywhere, all the time.
Exactly. The sheer volume of stimuli the human nervous system is expected to process daily is historically unprecedented.
We just weren't built for it.
We really weren't. So in that environment, the biological urge to just pull the plug and disconnect is overwhelming.
Makes total sense.
But it is absolutely essential that we understand whether our coping mechanisms are actually integrating our experiences and healing us, or if they are just locking us inside a very quiet, very protective cage.
A quiet, protective cage. I really love that imagery, even if it is, terrifying.
Bleak, yes.
It is. But it captures the mirage perfectly. Before we get into the literal neurobiology of how our bodies build that cage, which is fascinating, and we will definitely spend a lot of time there.
We have to define the behavioral trap itself first.
Right. We have to look at how we define healing in modern spaces, because a lot of what gets branded as healing, especially in wellness or like spiritual communities, isn't integration.
No, it's not.
It's simply a more refined, socially acceptable form of withdrawal. It's experienced as relief and completely mislabeled as progress.
That mislabeling happens because relief is a highly unreliable indicator of true healing.
Wait, really? Say more about that.
Well, it is a very challenging concept to internalize, right? Because in many contemporary conversations, emotional detachment is championed as the ultimate breakthrough.
Oh, for sure. We praise people for being unbothered.
Exactly. We applaud those who can completely disconnect from relational drama and just float above it all.
Like they're untouchable.
Right. But there is a sharp, unyielding distinction we have to make here. Not everything that reduces pain restores connection.
That's a great way to put it. Avoidance, when it's refined and polished up with a little spiritual vocabulary, can look identical to peace.
Think about it like this. If you touch a hot stove, pulling your hand away brings immediate, profound relief.
Obviously. The burning stops.
The pain stops scaling. But pulling your hand away didn't heal the burn on your skin.
Right.
And more importantly, if your strategy moving forward is to simply never enter a kitchen again, you haven't solved the fundamental problem of how to feed yourself.
You're just starving in the living room.
Exactly. A psychological system can get very, very comfortable in that state of withdrawal. It can build a whole life around avoiding the kitchen without ever actually restoring its connection to the broader world.
Okay, let me push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
If someone is incredibly overwhelmed, if their life is just a cacophony of stress, demands, and toxic interactions, isn't finding a quiet place inside themselves a good thing?
It can be, yes.
It feels like we might be punishing people for surviving. Like, if I can find a way to detach from a chaotic situation and feel some peace, shouldn't I take that win?
I see what you're saying.
I mean, think about a blaring car alarm. If it's going off outside your window at 3 a.m., turning it off is a huge relief.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, turning off the alarm doesn't fix the engine. The car still won't drive. But isn't turning off the deafening noise a necessary first step before you can even pop the hood?
The necessity of stabilization is a very fair point,
Right.
and clinically it is recognized as a valid first step.
Okay, good.
If someone is creating space from overwhelming stimuli, specifically to reestablish a baseline of stability, that is an absolute requirement for survival.
You can't fix the car with the alarm blaring in your ear.
You really can't. You cannot do the delicate work of integrating trauma or repairing a relationship while the alarm is deafening you.
Right.
The trap isn't the act of turning off the alarm. The trap is when that temporary, localized defense mechanism solidifies into a permanent identity.
The identity of the untouchable or non-attached person.
Yes. Emotional detachment creates that immediate relief by quieting the system and severely dampening reactivity. But you have to look at the long-term systemic result.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, if the consequence of this piece is a diminished capacity for intimacy, a severe narrowing of your emotional range, or a persistent, lingering sense of distance from the people around you,
Then you aren't actually connected.
right. What you have achieved is not connection. What you have achieved is stabilized disconnection.
Wow. Stabilized disconnect.
You haven't shielded the system. You just thoroughly insulated it.
You've built a really comfortable, beautifully decorated waiting room where nothing ever actually happens.
That's a great analogy.
But this raises a massive problem. If emotional detachment is just turning off the car alarm, why does our body trick us into thinking the car is completely fixed?
That is the big question.
Why does this fake peace feel so deeply physically real? How does a person mentally break out of a trap that their own body is actively building?
To understand that, we have to drop the psychology for a second and look at the actual biological hardware.
Okay, let's get into the biology.
This is where we bring in polyvagal theory, which fundamentally rewrites our understanding of these states of withdrawal.
Right, polyvagal theory.
We all know the traditional fight-or-flight response, right? The sympathetic nervous system flooding us with adrenaline and cortisol so we can fight the bear or run from it.
The classic survival mode.
But let's look at the nervous system's absolute last resort. When fighting or fleeing is no longer an option, when the system is completely overwhelmed, what is happening on a cellular level?
What is happening?
We are talking about dorsal vagal shutdown.
Dorsal vagal shutdown. So we're bypassing the basic informational highway definition of the vagus nerve here.
Exactly.
We know it connects the brain to the major organs, but what is actually happening in the body when it decides that active defense has failed and it shifts into this dorsal state?
Well, it's an ancient primal fallback strategy.
Because it sounds like the body is just pulling the emergency brake.
That's exactly what it's doing.
Yeah.
When the sympathetic nervous system realizes it cannot win, like the stressor is too big, the trauma is too inescapable.
The bear caught you.
The bear caught you. The dorsal branch of the vagus nerve overrides everything. It initiates a profound systemic biological shutdown.
Meaning what? Physically?
Your heart rate plummets, your respiration slows to a crawl, your digestive system practically halts, and crucially, your body floods your system with endogenous opioids, pain-killing endorphins.
To numb the pain of the proverbial lion's teeth.
Exactly, the evolutionary purpose. What's fascinating here is that it is a physiological state designed to mitigate the suffering of death or extreme injury.
That is so dark, but it makes total sense.
It produces a state that, from the inside, feels like profound isolation, heavy withdrawal, or complete internal shutdown. You are immobilized.
So you're saying our spiritual zen in these moments is literally just our nervous system playing dead?
Pretty much.
We're effectively possums in yoga pants.
That is a highly accurate, if slightly comical, way to frame it.
Possums in yoga pants. I love that.
But seriously, because of those pain-killing endorphins, and because the frantic, burning anxiety of the fight-or-flight state is suddenly eradicated,
The alarm turns off.
this massive biological collapse can actually feel like tranquility. It is the absence of panic, which the conscious mind quickly misinterprets as the presence of peace.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The body is chemically padding the walls of the cell.
It creates the absolute illusion that separation equals safety, and that disconnection equals regulation.
Wow.
From a clinical perspective, normalizing this dorsal vagal state as progress or enlightenment is a critical, sometimes dangerous error.
Because it's a lie.
It is not a resolution to the problem of overwhelming stress. It is a physiological strategy of extreme conservation.
Just barely keeping the lights on.
The system is remaining in a highly protective, defensive state, but it is actively rebranding that state as healing
Rebranding. Think about how often we see this in daily life.
all the time.
Have you ever noticed yourself or maybe a partner retreating from a really complex, messy conflict under the guise of protecting my peace?
Oh, the classic phrase.
Right. They adopt this very flat, calm demeanor. Their voice drops.
Yeah.
They say things like, I'm just not letting this affect me anymore. I am completely unbothered.
But look at the whole picture.
Exactly. When you look closely, they aren't just unbothered by the conflict. Their entire affect has flattened.
Everything goes offline.
They are suddenly unbothered by joy, by intimacy, by passion. They are just a dial turned all the way down to zero.
And society heavily rewards that zero state, especially in adults.
How so?
Well, a shutdown person is very quiet. They don't cause friction.
Oh, right.
They don't make emotional demands on their partners or their workplaces. So we look at them and say, wow, they're so centered. They are so professional.
They're just so easy to deal with.
But beneath the surface, they are fundamentally disengaged from reality. Healing cannot be the absence of feeling.
All right.
True healing means restoring the biological and psychological capacity to remain present within the feeling without the nervous system hijacking you into a shutdown.
Man, if our biological hardware can so easily trick us into thinking a catastrophic shutdown is actually an awakening, how does this relate to the software of our spiritual and psychological beliefs?
That's the necessary next step.
Because you can't really talk about the body playing dead without talking about what the mind believes is happening.
No, you can't separate them.
Which brings us to the systems thinking of Gregory Bateson. He insisted that we have to stop looking at mental health and spirituality as two separate disciplines.
Bateson's work in cybernetics and anthropology offers a radical shift in perspective here.
Cybernetics. Let's define that, because people hear that and think of, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right, Terminator. When we talk about cybernetics in this context, we aren't talking about robots. We are talking about systems of communication and control.
Okay, feedback loops.
Feedback loops, exactly. Bateson argued that there is no meaningful separation between mental health, biology, and spirituality.
They aren't different buckets.
They are not distinct compartments. They are different expressions of the exact same underlying process of information exchange.
A single, continuous system of perception, regulation, and relationship.
Exactly. If you view the human being as an interconnected cybernetic loop, you realize you cannot treat a psychological trauma over here in therapy and then go have a completely separate spiritual practice over there in a retreat and expect them not to heavily dictate the terms of one another.
Because it's all one circuit board.
Because we are dealing with a single system. Any discussion of healing, whether you call it clinical integration or spiritual enlightenment, cannot be evaluated just by looking at one isolated node, like how calm someone feels during meditation.
Let's ground this in a system we can visualize.
Okay.
Think of an ecosystem.
Right.
A forest. You have deer, you have wolves, you have flora.
Standard food web.
Let's say the deer are highly stressed because the wolves keep hunting them.
Makes sense.
If you manage this forest by simply removing all the wolves, the deer will experience immediate, profound relief. They will seem incredibly peaceful.
The alarm is off.
But what happens next? The deer overpopulate. They eat all the vegetation. They strip the forest bare. Eventually, the deer begin to starve, disease runs rampant, and the entire structural integrity of the forest collapses.
The whole system fails.
You solved an immediate, localized stressor, the anxiety of being hunted. But you did it by destroying the relational dynamics of the entire environment.
That's a powerful way to look at it.
You can't evaluate the peace of those deer just by how relaxed they look on day 1. You have to evaluate it by what happens to the whole system by day 500.
That ecosystem model maps perfectly onto Bateson's systems thinking regarding the human psyche.
How so?
You must evaluate any psychological or spiritual strategy within the larger system of your relational awareness.
Oh, I see.
If your meditation practice, your boundaries, or your philosophical framework is making you less capable of handling the messy, beautiful reality of human relationships, it is acting exactly like that wolf removal.
You're just stripping the forest bare.
It is creating a localized internal peace at the cost of total systemic collapse in your external life.
Wow.
True regulation does not remove your relational capacity, it restores it.
So it's not about muting everything.
Not at all. The goal of the human system is not to feel less. The goal of the system is to feel accurately within a structure that can actually hold what it feels.
So what does this all mean for someone listening to this right now who is sitting in their car or making dinner, trying to figure out if their own practices are actually integrating them or just isolating them.
It's a tough self-audit to do.
It really is. Because if dorsal vagal shutdown and spiritualized detachment are the incorrect paths, if they're just the body playing dead and the mind calling it a victory, what does the biologically and spiritually correct path out of this state actually look like?
Well, the biological reality is that you don't just wake up from a dorsal shutdown and feel instantly okay.
Right, it's not a light switch.
The only way out, the opposite of shutdown, is through active re-engagement.
Okay.
In polyvagal terms, this is known as ventral vagal activation. This is the mammalian social engagement system.
So we've touched on the extremes, the fight or flight sympathetic response and the freeze and collapse dorsal response. Let's look at the mechanics of this ventral vagal state. What is physically happening in the body when we shift into connection?
It is a remarkable biological shift. When the ventral vagal pathway is active, it physically changes how you interface with the world.
Like literally.
Literally. The muscles in your face and throat relax, allowing for prosody,
Prosody.
the melodic, expressive tone of voice that signals safety to other mammals.
Oh, so you don't sound flat and monotone anymore.
Exactly. The structures in your inner ear literally shift.
Wait, really? Your ears change?
Yes. The muscles of the middle ear contract to tune out low-frequency background rumbles, which evolutionarily signal predators or danger, and tune specifically into the frequency of the human voice.
That is unbelievable.
The heart rate variability increases, meaning your heart can fluidly speed up and slow down in response to your breathing and your environment without throwing you into a panic.
So your biology is literally physically opening its doors to the outside world.
Yes, it is the biological state of safety and social engagement. And psychologically, this state allows for a very specific type of existence: openness without fragmentation and connection without the loss of self.
Openness without fragmentation.
When your biology is in a ventral vagal state, external input from the world, a friend disagreeing with you, a stressful email, a sudden change in plans, is integrative.
It doesn't shatter you.
It confirms and interacts with your internal structure, rather than threatening to destroy it or replace it.
And there is a specific, highly recognizable psychological quality that emerges when two people interact from this ventral state. The concept of resonance.
Resonance is the hallmark of true ventral engagement.
Let's break that down.
It is the experience of encountering an idea expressed by another person and realizing with profound clarity that it has already been internally known by you.
It's that aha moment of connection.
It is the sudden, shared recognition of a pattern.
Oh, wait, let's make sure we aren't blurring the lines here.
What do you mean?
Because a lot of people feel what they think is resonance when they join a group and just adopt the leader's mindset. Ah, yes.
Like when someone perfectly parrots the talking points of a self-help book or mirrors a guru's exact cadence, they feel a massive sense of connection and belonging.
It feels like safety.
How is that different from true resonance? Because from the outside, it looks like two people totally in sync.
Resolving isolation does not happen by adopting the beliefs of others or attaching to external frameworks simply because they are shared.
Right.
What you are describing is conformity. It is attachment driven entirely by anxiety.
So it's still rooted in fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When a nervous system is still fundamentally fragile, still operating near that threat level edge, it will seek out a rigid external structure to lean on.
A crutch.
You use the group's dogma or the guru's vocabulary as a prosthetic shield to protect your own dysregulated system.
Oh, wow.
You aren't resonating, you are mimicking for survival.
So the resulting sense of shared understanding in a truly healed state doesn't come from social conformity. It comes from recognizing a common perception of reality.
The response is not agreement or imitation, it is alignment. Alignment. Okay.
Think about two independent musicians, let's say two violinists, tuning their instruments.
Love a music analogy.
If one violinist is just terrified of playing the wrong note, they might just stare at the other player's fingers and try to mimic their exact hand position.
Just copying the shape without understanding it.
That is conformity driven by fear. But true resonance is when both violinists independently adjust their strings until they hit the exact same acoustic frequency.
Ah.
They aren't mimicking each other. They are vibrating at the same physical reality of an A note. They have both independently encountered the exact same underlying pattern.
That is an incredible way to visualize it. Mimicking the hand position requires immense tension.
You're exhausted trying to keep up.
You are terrified of slipping up, terrified of being exposed as a fraud who doesn't actually know how to play the instrument.
Exactly.
That is a defensive, highly anxious state. But arriving at the frequency independently and hearing it harmonized by the person next to you, that feels expansive. It feels grounding.
And you can feel the difference in your nervous system.
Literally.
Where dorsal states narrow your perception, flatten your affect, and isolate you, ventral states broaden your awareness while maintaining your internal coherence.
You can be yourself and be with someone else.
It supports deep individuality and profound relational presence at the exact same time. You don't have to give up who you are to connect, and you don't have to sever connection to protect who you are.
Knowing the difference between merely agreeing with someone out of anxiety, mimicking the hand position, and truly resonating with them, hitting the same acoustic frequency, leads us to the ultimate definition of what true healing actually is in this cybernetic framework.
Yes, it ties it all together.
Because we've stripped away the illusions. We know it isn't just relief from the alarm.
Right.
It isn't biological detachment and endogenous opioids.
No.
It isn't conforming to a spiritual group to borrow their armor.
What emerges from this intersection of Bateson and polyvagal theory is a model of true restored capacity.
Restored capacity.
When an individual arrives at an insight through direct, independent perception, rather than adopting it just to reduce their own discomfort, that insight integrates entirely differently into their psychology.
How so?
It becomes part of a load-bearing, coherent internal structure. It is no longer a compensatory defense mechanism holding back the floodwaters.
It's structural integrity, not just social camouflage.
Exactly.
When your independent insight aligns with the insight of others, it suggests that something real, something structurally sound, has been perceived.
It validates your reality.
It proves that your system is no longer organized entirely around protection or withdrawal. You are actually interacting with the friction of reality again, and your biology isn't interpreting that friction as a lethal threat.
Which is the core thesis we're driving at. Healing is the restoration of the capacity to remain present within feeling.
Present within the feeling.
True healing means your intact internal structure can meet the world without needing to throw up a defense. You don't need to play dead, and you don't need to adopt someone else's dogma. And it is only within that specific, regulated capacity that genuine, unforced connection becomes biologically and psychologically possible.
To synthesize all of this for you listening, healing isn't building a beautiful, peaceful, impenetrable fortress to keep the messy world out.
Because eventually, you become a prisoner in that fortress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your world shrinks to the size of a single room. Healing is developing the internal structural integrity to walk out into the open.
Yes.
It's the ability to adapt to the weather. You can feel the rain, you can feel the wind, you might even get cold, but you know you aren't going to dissolve.
You can weather the storm.
You can remain present. You don't have to shut down your nervous system just because the sky gets dark.
This raises an important question, though. It forces us to reevaluate how we measure our own progress.
Oh, that's a good point.
For so long, the metric for psychological or spiritual success has been highly individualized. We have been taught to measure our healing by how quiet our minds are when we are sitting alone in a room in perfect conditions.
Which is easy. Anyone can be peaceful alone in a quiet room.
But a systems thinking approach, combined with the realities of our neurobiology, demands a different metric.
We need a better test.
We must challenge ourselves to measure our healing not by our capacity for isolation, but by our capacity for intimacy, presence, and responsiveness in the unpredictable, often messy presence of others.
Can you hold your ground and keep your heart open when someone is actively disagreeing with you?
That's the real test.
Can you feel deep structural sadness without your biology automatically flooding you with opioids and pulling the emergency eject button into dorsal vagal shutdown? That is the real test of an integrated system.
And it is a lifelong practice, because the allure of the mirage, the seductive quiet of refined withdrawal, will always be there.
It's always tempting to just check out.
When the friction of life gets high, it will always be easier to detach than to integrate. The body will always offer you the emergency brake.
Right.
But only integration, only staying in that ventral state of connection, brings you back to a fully realized life.
I think that is the perfect core revelation to take away from this deep dive. The goal of all this work therapy, mindfulness, relational building is not to feel less.
No.
The goal is to feel accurately. True healing restores your relational capacity rather than merely reducing your pain.
It is the fundamental shift from a state of biological conservation to a state of active structural connection.
So, to bring us back to where we started, sitting in the middle of the chaos. If true healing means an intact structure meeting the world without defense, ask yourself this. The next time you feel a surge of detachment or sudden quiet zen during a conflict, are you actually transcending the moment, or is your biology just quietly hitting the emergency eject button?
It's a question worth sitting with.
And what would happen if, just once, you chose to stay in the seat? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We can't wait to unpack the world together again next time.